Good day, traders. This is Stefanos on behalf of Tixee, and in today's webinar, I'll be giving an outlook of the market for the week of the 17th until the 21st of October. Looking at some of the highlights for next week, in the stocks front, we have several stocks reporting their figures for the Q3 earnings season, as we're now well underway. And on the Forex front, we'll have inflation data from three key countries, those being the UK, Canada, and Japan as well. But first, the disclaimer, as always, please know that all of the ideas discussed in the webinar are my own opinions and do not make up for any form of investment, trading advice, neither any recommendations to buy or sell. You should always do your own research and due diligence before buying or selling any securities, financial products, or instruments, and whether you use any kind of trading strategies. Any information that relates to past performance is not indicative of future results. So, looking at stocks, as we mentioned during the intro, we're now well underway with the Q3 earnings season. Now, for those who are not yet aware, the earnings season is basically the period that the major corporations, I would say mainly in the US, but across the globe as well, but the main focus is going to be for the ones in the US. It's the time that they come in and report their revenues and earnings over a specific period. Now, it's a very important period for the reason being that it can bring in a lot of volatility in the market, depending on what kind of results those companies report. Whether it's negative or positive, it doesn't really matter as a trader because we essentially want to take advantage of the volatility now. Whether it's going to move higher or lower, we don't really care about that. That's more for like long-term investing. And then again, like trading, if you're solely trading earnings report, in my opinion, those trades will be more short-term in the sense that you're trying to capitalize on a few days following the release of a report. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean it's everybody's cup of tea. It doesn't mean that everybody should be trading them. But nevertheless, I think whether you're trading them or not, it's still a good way to just monitor the market, see what's going on, and what's the overall sentiment and performance across different sectors, industries, and companies as well. Now, what I like using, there is an earnings calendar. I mean, you can use whichever one you want really, but I'm just going to go over the one that I prefer using, which is the Market Insider one. Again, you can use the one of your own preference, but this is the one that I really like because it has a very simple UI, no ads, no distractions, nothing. All you have is the earnings calendar, which is basically what you really need. Aside from that, you have these boxes at the very top here, and what they are, you can click on them so you can readjust the data you can see right here. So for the sake of the webinar, what we want is this one, which is next week, and in this little box it also shows you the number of stocks, the total number of stocks that are reporting their earnings. So you can click on that one, and from that point you get some additional filters, which are these ones here. So you can filter by large cap, mid cap, or small cap companies. Now again, the ones we're going to be focusing is going to be the large cap ones. Let's just refresh real quick. Okay, so it refreshed, and you can see we have the whole list right here. So first things first, we're going to be having, I glanced over the list so I could give you the summary of the stocks. So the ones reporting their figures next week is going to be Tesla, Johnson & Johnson, Bank of America, IBM, American Express, Goldman Sachs, and Netflix. So just by that, you can see we already have seven stocks who are going to be reporting their figures. Of course, you don't need to focus on all seven, but that just shows you we're at the beginning and we're already getting these many companies releasing their earnings reports. What you can do, I mean, what I do is just obviously what you can do with your own earnings calendar. You can just have a look at the list, and what you can do later is you can switch onto Tixee's website and you can navigate to the markets at the very top. You can click on stocks, and it's like a very easy and quick way for you to see if that stock is available, because obviously you want to make sure that the stock you're going to be looking at is going to be available for trading as well. Then you can do Control F or Command F, depending if you're on Windows or Mac. And then you can just type in the ticker symbol. So in the top right, you can see American Express, so it's AXP. If you wanted Netflix, it would have been NFLX as an example. You can hit enter and you can see we have two results. And you can see it's already being highlighted here. We also mentioned Goldman Sachs. So for this one, we can just type in GS and hit enter, and you can see. So you get the gist. You can just pretty much search the ticker, and you're going to be able to see whether it's available on the platform or not. Now, another key piece of information with regards to the earnings is the timing of the release. What I mean by that is whether they're going to be reporting the figures after the market close in the US again, or is it going to be released before the market opens, so in the pre-market hours. For this one, there is a very easy way for you to check. What I use is TradingView's charts. You don't really need to use it for charting because obviously you have the tixee web trader, but what you can use it as is to basically see the timing of the release. So we mentioned Netflix, so you can just type in the ticker symbol. You can see it right here. And for this one, you want to switch on to the daily time frame. You can see the time frames right here in the top left. And at the very bottom, you're going to get these little labels here, which is the earnings label. And you can see this one is in purple because it has yet to be released. And if I click on it, it tells me the date, which is going to be the 18th of October. And you have this little moon icon here. Basically what it shows you is that the figures are going to be released on the 18th after the market close. So why is this important? The reason being because if it's released, if the figures are released after the market close, then the impact is going to be seen on the very next day with the open. Now, unless obviously you're trading the after hours or pre-market, which I wouldn't really recommend because it's very thin on liquidity, then you're really going to be capitalizing on any moves with the open on the very next day. So again, it's a good indication just to give you an idea of when to expect the figures and whether you should be trading them before the release or after the release. If it were to be released in the pre-market hours, you would just see a little sun icon here. Instead, just highlighting the fact that it's going to be released prior to the market open. And also you get, of course, the earnings estimates and the revenue estimates as well, which leads me to the next point, because obviously you have the estimates. So depending whether it's going to be beaten or missed, that's how we're going to essentially see or anticipate the move, whether it's going to be to the downside or towards the upside. But aside from that, I think it's also very important just to make sure you're listening to the press conferences released by the C-level executives, because even if they do beat the expectations, if the executives come in and they provide us with, like, let's say, a negative growth outlook for the company in the near future, then that could outweigh the actual results of the earnings report. So, I mean, yeah, you want to focus on the figures, but I would say also pay attention to any press conferences that are going to be released after the release of the report. So in a nutshell, this is essentially what you want to be paying attention to when we get all these earnings releases. And again, we're going to be covering them week by week, giving you a summary of the ones you would expect to release their earnings on a given day, and obviously the timing as well. Now, moving on to onto Forex, and we're going to be moving to a different kind of calendar. This time, I'm going to have the economic calendar, which you can very easily find from tixee's website. All you need to do, you can just click and go back onto the home page, and then you go to the news and analysis section, and then the economic calendar. It's similar, but this one is just giving you the events basically that are released by country when it comes to economic performance, whether it's like interest rate, unemployment data, inflation reports, and so on and so forth. So it's like a similar format to what we saw earlier with the earnings calendar. You have some filters. You can select next week, and again, you can use these filters here depending on the kind of events you want to be looking at. Obviously, the ones that I like looking at are the high impact events, because those are the ones that are likely to bring in the added volatility. We can just set it to all countries. You can select the filters here as well. And you can see it's obviously readjusting the data. So looking at Monday, I mean, we don't have any major events aside from the one from China, which it says 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, this is not really like a report that's going to be releasing figures or anything. It's just probably like some kind of important event in China. And depending their speeches, they could, bring in some added volatility in the market, and we could see some moves, but again, it's going to be in the early hours and most likely going to be affecting the Asian pair. So we're looking at US dollar, Japanese yen, or even in the Pacific. So we're going to be looking at Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, and so on and so forth. Thereafter, towards the regular EU session, we're going to have production data from the Czech Republic. Tuesday, it looks like it's going to be carrying on into Tuesday, and we'll come to the actual first high impact event from a country who also happens to have one of the major currencies, which is going to be the Australian dollar. In this case, you have the meeting minutes from the Reserve Bank of Australia. You can also use this little tooltip here to give you an idea of the kind of volatility you can expect in the hours following the event. Thereafter, we're going to have some data from China, which is going to be GDP growth data, as well as unemployment rates. And in the regular EU session, we're going to have economic sentiment figures from Germany. Then going on to Wednesday, we have this inflation data from the UK, which we mentioned during the intro. It's going to be followed by inflation data from South Africa. We're going to get production figures from Portugal. Towards midday, we're going to get housing data from the US. And towards, right after midday, it's still going to be 1:30. We're going to get inflation data as well as production figures from Canada. And wrapping up the day, we'll get production figures from Russia. And then going on to Thursday, get trade balance figures early in the morning from Japan. We're then going to be getting unemployment data from Australia, followed by unemployment data from the Netherlands. In the regular EU session, we're going to have production data from Germany and Poland. Then unemployment figures from Hong Kong and Luxembourg. Then housing data from the US. And then lastly, finishing the day, production data from South Korea. Then we get on to Friday. So we get consumer confidence figures from the UK. And then the third and last kind of inflation report that we mentioned during the intro, which is going to be from Japan on this occasion. Towards the regular EU session, we get unemployment data from Sweden, followed by retail sales from the UK. Further inflation figures, this time from Hong Kong. And then finishing off the day with some energy data, so as we get the Baker Hughes total rig count from the US. Now, leading up to the kind of like commodities asset class, you may have noticed that we haven't really seen the oil inventory report. For that one, you just want to switch onto the medium impact events, and we can scroll down towards Wednesday, and you can see this is where you can essentially find the oil inventory report for those who are likely going to be trading oil prices. So yeah, this is where you can essentially see it. And this pretty much wraps up the economic calendar and the main events for next week. And lastly, we're going to be looking at cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin specifically. So let me just pull up the chart. It hasn't really made any movements ever, like for the past kind of 3-4 weeks. So like past month, it's pretty much been trading in this narrow range. Now, let me add the two exponential moving averages. We can see that they're pretty much still pointing towards the downside and that they're bearish. We can also add the RSI real quick just to get, and yeah, we can see it's well below the 50 mark, sitting around the 34 level. So we have two kind of bearish indicators, one being again the crossover of the two exponential moving averages, being the 8 period and the 21. And the RSI, which is below the 50-point mark. Now, what I'm seeing, if we want to look at it purely from a technical analysis perspective, if we were to be using wave analysis as an example, let me just remove this for now so we can clear up the chart a bit. So what we can see forming now is sort of like a flat correction. What I mean by flat correction is, let me just draw this line, pull it a bit further down. And we also have the top where we had the most recent drop, which started from there and it extended all the way here. So the flat is essentially you get a pretty strong impulse wave, which was this one, and now we're consolidating in this tight kind of range. So the flat is when you get essentially move number 1, move number 2, which retests the low here, and then we expect and we anticipate a third one to come and retest the top, and this is essentially the flat pattern that I'm mentioning. And usually, I mean, the common idea is that the breakout we're going to be getting is going to be following the last move, what movement the last move made, and this one was towards the downside, so you can anticipate that the next move potentially could be towards the downside. Now again, this is not really anything that's guaranteed. Again, we want confluence to be on our side, and what I mean by confluence is obviously we looked at the two exponential moving averages, which were both towards the downside. The RSI is also below the 50 level, and we also get this kind of pattern, which is the strong impulse, then the flat, which is like in the form of an A, B, and C. So you can potentially anticipate the next move is going to come and retest this area here before we move further down. We also had like a similar movement up here. You can see if I draw the impulse wave again, and then we had again the consolidation phase in the form of A, B, and C. Then we move down, and then we're probably getting one more A, B, and C, and we could get one further move towards the downside. But again, it's obviously it's important to stay patient and just see what kind of movements we're going to be getting while the prices move up back towards this level, because obviously if we get one strong move up and we break above it and we come retest, and then we get one more strong move up, then this could totally flip the bias towards the upside. So again, it's good just to be patient and just let the market show its hand, and depending what kind of movement it's going to be making here, we can use that to form our narrative, whether we want to position ourselves towards the downside or towards the upside. But yeah, there you have it. This as far as the outlook for next week's markets. I hope you enjoyed the video and you found it useful, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Until then, trade safe.